In this video, I'm going to share 3 ways that you can use storytelling to boost your marketing. The problem with marketing these days is that so much of it is focused on convincing instead of connection. That's why storytelling can be such a powerful tool, because it is one of the oldest strategies in existence in human evolutionary history for deeper connection. We used to use stories to transmit wisdom, to share lessons with other generations. This is how we have myths and legends that go back thousands of years, well before we even had the written word. And that's because stories touch a place deep inside of us. They help us remember things, and they lodge deep within us in a way that facts and figures just can't. I want to share a quick story about how I recognized the power of storytelling at one point in my life. About, 8 or 9 years ago, when I was I used to produce this event called the Women's Success Summit. Now, back then, I was really different than I am now, and I was all business all the time. And I remember I would get up on that stage and I would go straight into the content, and I would, give value and teach stuff. And I thought I was doing a great job, and people got a lot of value out of my events, and they came back again and again. But at the end of this one event, I think it was 2011, a guy came up to me, a guy that had attended my Women's Success Summit, and he said, "Would you be open to some feedback? I'm a storytelling coach, and I think I could help you be even better on stage. You were fantastic, and I feel like there might be this other opportunity." And of course, I was stung just a little bit, but I was also more curious than I was stung. So I said, "Yes, of course. Tell me what you got." So this guy's name is Andy Enriquez, and we're really good friends now. Andy says to me, "Michelle, I feel like it would be so much more powerful for me to learn these lessons from you if I knew what your story was. If I knew your background, if I knew how you figured this stuff out, even if you just did a 10 or 15-minute story at the beginning of this event, I feel like people would connect with you more and listen even more deeply and get even more value." Now, what he said makes sense to me, and he offered me the opportunity to work with him and develop my core story. And so we started working together. I think we did 4 sessions together, and over those 4 sessions, Andy helped me identify my core story. He helped me find the nuggets in my story that could be relatable to other people, looking for what he calls the universal truths in my story that would connect it to audiences. And we looked for this structure. He helped me find the structure of the story, which was the context of the story, the content of the story, the conflict of the story, and then finally the climax. So he made my story very dramatic. I didn't even realize my story was dramatic, but every time in any single one of these videos that you've ever heard me tell my story, part of it comes from that work that I did with Andy. Now, I use story, my core story and others, now throughout all of my events, all of my speaking engagements, all of my videos. Like I just did that. I used a story. And I use it usually I use them in 3 ways. The first way that I use stories, which is what I just did with you all, is that I use my core story to connect more deeply. Now, there are variations of my core story. It's a big story, right? There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of elements to it. And I pick and choose. I can do a short 30-second version, or I could do a long, 30-minute version. But essentially, by having my core story, I have a way to connect with people and for people to get kind of a bird's eye view quickly of who I am and why I'm somebody that they might want to listen to. And so you can do the same thing. I invite you, I encourage you to look at your whole history, to look at the history of, whatever it is, the work you do, of your life story, whatever the time frame is that you're working with, to find that story arc, to find that climactic moment, that decision that you made, or that turning point in your story that created something new. And I invite you to do it, across all aspects of your business and your life. You might have a story about how you started your business. You might have a story about your childhood that led you to who you are today. You might have a story about a big breakthrough that you had. Andy, one of the things he talks about is looking through your past and finding your 3 biggest challenges and your 3 biggest successes and mining those for your core story and stories. By the way, I would love to hear your stories. So if you care to share, please in the comments, give me a quick overview of who you are and how you came to be here. A second way to use stories in marketing is to use other people's stories. So we already talked about using your own story or stories. Now I'm talking about collecting stories from perhaps your clients. One of the most powerful pieces of marketing is social proof. So if you have clients that you've done great work with, if you've had big success stories in the work you've done, if you can gather those as a story. So there's a difference here between gathering those as a case study or as a testimonial, like so-and-so is so great, I loved working with her, versus gathering the story. So imagine your client saying something like, before I met you, so-and-so, I was depressed, I was anxious, I was sad, and I met her and she taught me this amazing thing, and this is the work we did together, and then this is what happened. This is the big, resolution, the climax, right? Then this came true, my dream or whatever it is. So that story arc, following that with your clients and then sharing those stories is infinitely more powerful actually than sharing a testimonial, which can often sound sort of scripted or canned. As you consider doing these client stories, I invite you to create a structure or a format to help your clients, because most people really truly don't know how to tell a story with a good structure. So if you created that structure with 4 or 5 really good questions, like question number 1, what was life like before you met so-and-so? Number 2, what was it that you were looking for? What did you want? Number 3, what was in the way of that? What was the challenge you were facing? Number 4, what was the work that you did together? And number 5, what's the outcome and what's possible going forward? So those 5 simple questions actually lead someone down a story path, and then you can grab that video or that written testimonial and you can share it on your website, you can share it on YouTube, on social media, but this is a much more powerful way to incorporate story into your marketing rather than using a simple plain old testimonial. The third way to incorporate stories into your marketing is to use, instead of using you and instead of using a client, using a hypothetical story. Like, especially if you don't have a lot of clients yet, you can create something hypothetical, a fictional account of a story. I will never forget one of the books that in business school and getting my MBA that made the biggest impact on me was a book called The Goal. It was a book about the driest, most boring subject in business, operations, in my opinion. I know not everybody thinks that operations is dry and boring, but I do. And I was not looking forward to this class. Well, right away, early on in the class, the teacher assigned this book, The Goal. And I think his name was Ilyashu Goldratt or something like that. He passed away recently. But this book was written about operations, but it was written in a fictional story format. He basically takes you on a journey through the operational optimization of this factory and how they figured out how to make things flow through the factory easier. And they did it with characters and conflict and all this really great stuff. I still remember that book. I can't tell you how many other business books I've read and completely forgotten, but that book, 15, almost 20 years later, sticks with me because it was written in the format of a story. So you can write a fictional account, obviously making sure people understand that it's fictional, and that's a way that you can get yourself launched and started before you have clients that can do a testimonial or a case study story for you. If this resonated with you, and if you're looking for new and exciting and creative ways to market your services, then let's have a conversation. You can feel free to go to superstaractivator.com/go and set up time either on my calendar or someone on my team to learn if and how we might be able to support you in growing your business.